Hi, my name is Garrett Batty, and I am pitching a PG Hallmark style romantic comedy about a man in Hawaii who is selling his paddle company and a businesswoman who falls for him. Boom, now we know what that is.
This is Truly Independent, a show that demystifies the indie film journey by documenting the process of releasing independent films in theaters. Each week, Garrett Batty and I, Darren Smith, will update you on our journey, bringing guests to share their insights into the process and answer your questions. Hey, Garrett. How's it going?
Good, Darren. Good to see you. Welcome to another episode.
Yeah, you too. I'm excited. I'm gonna give a disclaimer at the beginning of the thing that I might be a little loopy today. I'm a little
Okay,
underslept.
okay. We're running on low sleep. Well,
Yeah,
uh,
which as we are used to as filmmakers, right? But it leads into what we're talking about today, which is why I brought it up. So last week, there's a local festival. It's probably the closest film festival to my house, unless Provo High School does a film festival. But the Utah International Film Festival was last week. And you and I got to participate on a pitch panel on Saturday morning, but I was also there Wednesday. I did a 3-hour workshop for all the filmmakers there, which went great. And Thursday night, I was there late we had a screening of Give Me Your Eyes, which I'd never seen with an audience before. I didn't even know it was in the festival,
that
but
was
it was
this,
there
that was this year.
and we watched it. That was this year.
Oh, I didn't
So
realize that.
that was fun. I don't know if it won any awards or anything like that, but it was just like, oh, a movie I produced is in this festival and nobody told me.
That's great.
As it happens, so I was there late Thursday night. Friday was a long day. Saturday was a long day. Sunday was a long day. So I'm just like a little tired, but I'm so excited to be here. It's the thing I look forward to most every week at this point. So that's what we wanted to talk about, though. We had this pitch fest, and we've talked about pitching in the past, but this is like a very specific style of pitching. And we got some good examples, some not great examples, some like really brave, awesome filmmakers that came and pitched to a panel of 5 of us, 5 producers and directors and line producers and stuff. So curious your takes or takeaways from that, or if we want to go through like some, maybe are there things that we would recommend people do and don't do? That's kind of our topic today.
Yeah, pitching during the pitch fest and what to expect. It was good to see you down there. I did not know that your movie was going to be screening, so congratulations on that. And I
Thanks.
didn't know you'd be on this panel with me, so it was really fun, really neat to be invited out to that and then show up, and there you were, one of the 5 panelists, which
Yeah.
is neat. I've been so buried on deliverables for Faith of Angels. We're getting ready for our streaming release. We're actually streaming on Living Scriptures, which is one of the smaller streaming services, and will be released on Angel Studios to their guild in the coming months. And then Great American Family has picked us up. But with each of these comes a massive list of deliverables, not just the movie, but all the audio tracks and all the support and metadata and everything like that. So that's been what I've been under the rock, just doing that. And we'll dedicate an episode to things that you should prepare for as an independent filmmaker for getting your film into streaming and what you need to do to deliver everything.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to that too, because as we're talking this season about prep and development and those things, a lot of those deliverables are things you should be planning on early on before you get into production. So that'll be a good episode. Little
Yeah,
teaser for you, audience. Little teaser.
that's right. I was impressed. Just an overview. Yes, this was the Utah International Film Festival, which is run by Warren and Donna Workman, and they have done an incredible job of growing this festival from something that was an idea years ago to really this multi-day. I mean, there's a really cool festival environment. They have a great location, and I showed up, and there was a check-in table and name badges and just bustling. This was at 10 a.m. on a Saturday, and the place was packed, and I was just so impressed. So, again, shout out to independent film and film festivals. If there is a festival local to you in your area, get involved in that. And there are a few here in Utah that do a fantastic job of encouraging independent film, everything from shorts to features to pitches and screenplays and everything like that. So Warren and Donna have done an incredible job of putting this together. Yeah. So I feel like I'm not trying to stall. I just want to kind of paint the picture. So we
Tell
showed
us
up.
what you thought, Garrett.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, yes. And the way this was lined up, there was a panel of 5 producers, you and me being 2 of those, and of varying, looking for different projects. We have different kind of ideal projects that we're looking for.
Yeah.
And then each person that was pitching had signed up previously and came prepared to pitch to the panel and to the room. There were maybe 40 people listening in, 40, 50 people.
Yeah, it was a packed house.
It was surprisingly packed. And so, yeah, they got about 2 or 3 minutes to pitch, and then the panelists had 2 or 3 minutes to respond and give feedback or request a script or whatever. So it moved through. It lasted 2 hours, and we heard some incredible ideas.
I was really impressed. I didn't know what to expect. I had come to this festival last year. I really just went to like a networking event one night and was really impressed at who was there. I was like, oh, I should have been planning on this all week. And so here I am this week being more involved and participating. But yeah, it was great. There was another like director producer and a line producer and other producers that were on the panel. And it was cool that they did a good job kind of selecting a smattering of different people for the panel, because it was really, the context of it was pitch this panel of 5 people and one of them might be interested in
Yeah.
a conversation or reading your script. They kind of set it up like Shark Tank, and I'm like, well, I don't know that we're making offers in the room. We're not doing that style of pitching, but definitely the idea of, oh, I want to learn more about that, or oh, I want to meet you. And to fast forward to the end for a second, I have 4 scripts in my inbox that I'm reading this week that I requested from people who pitched at the Pitch Fest. So it does work, But yeah, there was some feedback that I gave kind of more than once, and those were the points that I wanted to share. So maybe we kind of piggyback or ping pong back and forth between what could you do to find more success in a situation like this, or maybe some of your takeaways or favorite pitches or things like that. So
Sure.
I'll
Sure.
start with, a lot of people came in with the plan to pitch a short film. And it was interesting because the feedback from a lot of the panelists was, we can't do anything with that. Shorts don't make money. So it's great for you as the writer / director. It's great for the actors. It's great for the crew because they're all going to get paid, hopefully. But how does an investor, or how does a producer who's, subsidizing the film with their time and effort, how do they make money on this? And so shorts are a hard thing to pitch, especially in a pitch fest scenario like this, because the context was, we have the ability to raise money or greenlight films because we have companies that do that and we produce movies. And it doesn't really make sense for us to invest in short films unless there's some other outcome that we're optimizing for, rather than the financial upside. So I don't know. I don't remember you saying anything positive or negative about pitching shorts, but what do you think about pitching a short project to a panel of producers at a pitch fest?
Well, I mean, I think I feel the same way. That I guess it depends on what the expectation of the pitch is. If that individual is just seeking practice pitching, and I'd like to get in front of people and hear my idea and how it resonates, I'm happy to listen to that. But I agree, as a producer who makes a living as a filmmaker, short films are not something that, in my experience, have been sellable. If they're pitching because it's such an easy barrier to entry, here's a super low budget short, then typically there's not enough money to sustain a professional producer's needs to even kind of worry about being interested in that. So probably great practice and great exercise for them, but I would not pitch a short film expecting that a producer on a panel is going to fund or really, glom onto that project.
Yeah. As a quick addition to this topic, though, of short films and film festivals, I will say there was a team that produced a short film that played at the Zion's Indie Film Fest last year, a film called To Air. And it blew me away. I was just massively impressed at the craft and the quality of the storytelling, the acting, the cinematography, the sound, the music. Everything was so top notch. And I ended up talking to the filmmakers at ZIFF last year when we were in like the filmmakers lounge. and was just really impressed, and talked to them and gave them some advice and said, I think, their next thing they wanted to do was another short. And I'm like, why? Like, you're ready. You guys have proven that you're ready for feature length. You understand storytelling. You understand the art of all of this. And they kind of took it to heart and started working on some longer feature length scripts, and even produced a feature length project that'll be at ZIFF this year. And so we actually went to lunch on Saturday after the Pitch Fest, and we sat for 3 hours talking about their next project, what I'm doing with the film fund, whether or not we want to do something together. And so short films are a really great way to have like a calling card that can get you opportunities, can get you connections, can get you meetings. But the idea of, before producing one, like going to a pitch fest and pitching a short film to be, financed by a panel of producers, may be a harder sell.
Yeah. It goes back to the kind of a principle that has been a guiding principle on this series, which is to know your audience, right? And so if your audience is, hey, I'm pitching my film professors and we're gonna, all get together and make a movie, and I've got to pitch my short film idea, awesome. But if these are professional producers that are looking for projects to invest in or to develop or to be involved with, then a short film isn't typically something that we're looking for. I'll tell you, okay, so one of the things that really stood out to me as a great thing is there were several pitches that came in and they started with a strong hook. And I think that that is vital. Your first, and I noticed this, of the 5 panelists, we were taking notes, right? And so how that works is somebody's coming up, they usually introduce themselves. So I'm jotting down their name. And then they say, my story or my film is da 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 da. And I'm going to write down those 2 or 3 keywords so I can remember this. Now, and then usually my notes kind of stopped and I'd pay attention to what was being said. But that first 2 or 3 sentence, that was the log line or the hook, and those pitches that had rehearsed that knew what they were going to say, that knew what their story was, and came in with, here's the brief concept, here's the genre, and here's similar titles or similar films. Those were easy to really kind of accept and listen to and pay attention to, and I think those stood out.
Yeah, this was on my list of things to talk about because it was such a big differentiator between the ones that I immediately got and the ones that I was like, wait, what is this? So definitely things that I recommend to include at the beginning of your pitch in this kind of a scenario: the rating, the genre, the comps, the title, the hook, the things that you just talked about. They all give me an idea, because there were half the time where they didn't say what the genre was. And I'm like, is this a horror? Is it a thriller? Is it a drama? Because I don't know. And they didn't really go into detail on, yeah, and then they stab him in the neck and blood spurts out, so it's a horror, right? It's like, okay, well, I don't know what this is, and I don't know how to give you feedback, because if it is a horror pitch, you did a great job. If it's a drama pitch, you probably missed a couple of key elements to make a drama really, really sell. So setting the context up front is really, really important. I liked when people included comps, because it just gives me an instant connection to a visual, a style, a tone. And I can go, oh, okay, that's interesting. If it's this plus this, I've never heard that before. How are they going to pull it off? And then they do, and you're like, oh, that was a great pitch, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it stood out. If you come in and you say, hi, my name is Garrett Batty, and I am pitching a PG Hallmark style romantic comedy about a man in Hawaii who is selling his paddle company and a businesswoman who falls for him. Boom. Now we know what that is, and you can even get into the budget range. And we'll talk about the budget range because we had various opinions on that. But anyway, a quick hook, they know what they're listening to, and now you tell the story.
Yeah.
And be concise but I'm already intrigued. I know immediately if this is something that I can listen to, or if I can help who I can help pass them on to if it's not for me.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, you teed up my next bullet point.
Okay.
Budget. Do you include the budget number or the budget range in your pitch? And I was a vehement no. Please don't do that. So I think we probably have differing opinions. So don't just pause the podcast and be like, okay, I got to take that out of my pitch. But let me state my case here. So on the panel, we had people that produce movies for $50, $60, $75,000. We had people that produce movies for $1, $2 million. And we have people that have been on projects that are multiple $1 million, from everything from TV to features and documentaries. And so we ran the gamut. And basically, if every time that someone said this is a low budget, $100,000 or less, or this is a $250,000 budget, or this is a micro budget, I was like, I'm out. Like before they even said the log line or what it is, I'm like, I can't do that. I don't do that,
Yeah.
because in order for me, like you said earlier, to get paid as a professional producer, my rate for someone to hire me is 50 grand to produce a movie. Like that's the bare minimum. And it's really based off of a percentage of the budget to calculate my fee. So if you're paying me 2% of your budget, it's got to be like whatever that is, a $2.5 million budget. And so if you tell me it's 250K, I'm like, I can't help you, because I can't afford to give up the income I would have elsewhere to come and work on your movie. And so I really got not rubbed the wrong way. I wasn't offended or anything. I was just like, man, I'm going to give this feedback, because every time someone said low budget or micro budget or 100,000, I was like, I'm out. I can't help you. I did come back after asking some questions of people of like, send me the script anyway. I'm curious, because really, and the reason behind that statement of don't tell me what the budget is in your pitch is that's my job. Like I'm a line producer. I'm a producer. As you're pitching it, I'm putting together, does this benefit from having a $5 or $10 million budget because it requires big name actors and big stunts and big visual effects in order to pull it off, or a big marketing budget? Or, wow, is this a really small movie that could be done for $1 million or even just under $1 million because it's contained and there's like 3 main characters, but it's really compelling? Like, let me figure that out and kind of put it into a budget range. And then we can have a conversation that expands on that. But man, every time someone did it, I was just like, well, not for me.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on budget in a pitch?
I think your point was well said. That yes, let the producer decide what the budget is. I think that in the pitch you can kind of codify what your movie is, and we can parse out what the budget should be as you're talking. You're right. I don't think you should shoot yourself in the foot and go, I'm looking for a low budget indie film movie, right? Because 4 out of the 5 producers on that panel were immediate passes before even hearing your idea. And they might say, hey, I think this is $1 million. Like, I think this is a $2.5 million movie. If we get the right names and package it together, we could really pour something into it. But that's something you're not interested in. So
Yeah.
we shouldn't do that. But I think if you stand up and say, yes, this is a story. This is a Hallmark style rom-com set in Hawaii. Now we kind of, okay, I can picture that. That's a $1 to $2 million film. There was one that kind of talked about, okay, my movie is, he said, this is a low budget movie and it's an action thriller and it starts out in Europe and I think
in the 1960s.
Yeah. That's not a low
Oh,
budget movie. And it shows that maybe this individual doesn't understand the concept of what he's pitching or the amount of effort that would go into making this. And so probably something that I would stay away from.
yeah.
So yeah, I think you can codify what it is without saying what it is.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you're right. Like it says that they don't really know what they're talking about if they quote a budget and they've never like done a budget before as a line producer. Second thing is it made me feel like they don't believe in themselves. Like, why
Sure.
are you limiting the potential of this project, which could be a really great $7 million indie if you get it into the right hands and the right production companies and the right people? There were 2 or 3 projects that I was like, man, this would be amazing as like a super small A24 or a, $4 or $5 million Blumhouse or something like that. Like, why say it's a $50,000 movie? That's not a thing. Like,
Yeah.
like who's making those movies? I don't know. But it made me feel like they didn't believe in themselves either, which kind of took me out of the pitch. It's almost like when someone gets up for a talk and says, hey, so I found out that I was doing this yesterday and I didn't have time to prepare because I was traveling all morning and I woke up sick and I have a headache. And so buckle in. We got an hour-long presentation. And you're like, oh, dude,
Yeah.
why did you say that? Now I'm out. Like, I
No,
want to
I'm really
leave.
thinking that. Correct.
So up front, don't shoot yourself in the foot by A, talking about things that you don't have the experience of, or B, undercutting yourself by saying this is only worth a $50,000 or $100,000 investment. That's not a great start to your pitch either.
Now, I will say this: there is, I mean, I think there is that mindset of, as far as knowing your audience. That panel, we were not investors; we were producers. So your investor is clearly going to want to understand your budget and know that you have a budget and a breakdown and something like that. But that's what a producer will bring to them. So maybe the intention there was saying, "Hey, look, I can make this movie for $50,000. That's what I'm looking for." They're not even looking for a producer.
Mm,
So that may have been the mindset or the intention. At some point, you have to have that conversation about budget. In that particular panel, though, it was less effective, I think, to lead out with how much money you need. A little asterisk on that. There was a pitch that stood out, and I think she was very organized and she was rehearsed and had her pitch, and had already had some commitments. And so she mentioned we've already raised 25% of the budget, or we have a commitment from England for 25% of the budget, and pressed her on that a little bit and said, "What is that?" She said, "Well, it's 25%." Okay, what is the amount? I was just kind of curious about that. So there's an element there that to take into consideration. Okay, there's already some producing happening. Maybe we should,
yeah.
she needs a partner, and so that was a conversation we talked a little bit after.
Yeah. And within that same context, I think it's okay to say if a producer pushes you on it and says, "Hey, well, what budget were you thinking for this?" You're like, "I don't really know. I'm a writer. Like
Sure.
I'm writing for independent budgets." But it's totally fine. I would rather have you say, "I genuinely don't know. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are," and just put it back on me rather than say 50,000 and I'd be like, "Oh, well, okay, no." Right? So it may even be something where you strategically avoid the conversation and put it back on the producer you're pitching to. Because, I was line producer on the 4 movies that I've produced as well. So I get that stuff. And maybe that's what you're pitching for, is to find a partner who can come in early, help you put all of your documents together, all your pitch materials together, a real line item budget that makes sense to someone in the industry who can read it and go, "Oh, you've done your homework here. This makes sense." Cool. So yeah, it was an interesting thing because there were like, I split the panel in half. I think Chantel didn't really chime in on that one, but like the other 2 people were like, "Definitely tell me what it is so I know if it's for me or not." And I was like, "Please don't do that. You're hurting me here." So it was an interesting part of the afternoon.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, and it just goes to show, I guess, there's no right way to do this. These are all
Yeah.
tips and discussion points, and you might get in front of a panel that's what they want you to lead with is, what does this cost? But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that stood out is when people, and this came from also an experience that I was pitching the week
Mm,
prior, but
yeah.
the tip would be to highlight the why now. Like, this story exists, or this movie exists, but what is the urgency or the relevance or the why now are we should this particular story be made? What are the stakes? Both the stakes of the story, which is great as you're getting into it, and also the project. One stood out. She did a fantastic job about this, where she told the story, mentioned that she had the script done, and that she was working, continuing to work, and then she talked about a little bit of the cause, and why this was an important social issue right now, and it was relevant. It kept the pitch interesting and gave us a great uh, point to discuss afterwards. And I just appreciated that there was an awareness of, there's 35 movies being pitched here, or 30 movies, or whatever it was. You got to figure out why we're going to select one, which one is urgent.
Yeah. And it may be a combination of why now versus, what have you already done? What's the momentum of the context coming into this pitch? Like you already mentioned, there were people who had already committed some money or have attached some people or things like that. And you're like, that helps us understand that, like, oh, there's already some movement here. You're not asking us to do everything for you, which is kind of the subtext sometimes. So yeah, I think that's both of those are really important to include. I don't really have anything else to say other than, yeah, that's
Well,
smart.
you hit it at it. The flip side of that is if you don't do that, then you say, hey, I've got this idea and I'm thinking about making it a movie, and I just think, okay, you're not even looking for a producer, or if you're like, what would my involvement be? I want to raise money to what? To help you develop the project, and that might not be what you might not be ready to pitch at that point.
Yeah. If we're going back to the Shark Tank comparison, when people come on the Shark Tank and they go, we have a purchase order from Walmart for 1,000 or 1,000,000 units, and we need money to fill the order. That's urgent, right? They're saying we've already been given the stamp of approval by one of the biggest retailers in the United States. And that's a lot easier for an investor to put their money in because they know that it's already got product market fit. There's already distribution. There's already a demand for whatever it is. So that's the same kind of thing you're thinking about here is going, hmm, is there anything that's happened or will happen if I can get some fundraising that can add some urgency to the pitch? It doesn't have to be socially relevant necessarily. That's one
Right.
version of it. But there's there's a presidential election that's happening, and we need to do this documentary now because we're going to document the 6 months leading up to the thing. Okay, well, that's really urgent because if you don't get the money right now or in the next month, it's too late. So anything that you can do to add a sense of urgency and a sense of there's demand, there's momentum, those are good things to add to the pitch.
Yeah, and I think there were several that did have that, and they did a great job of pointing out, I did a short film on that, and it won this award at this festival, and now there's interest in the feature. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
really
a
good.
why now. It's not a social issue, but there's momentum. So as a producer, I'm like, okay, I'd like to participate in that.
Yeah. Well, and it also has a different weight to it where you're like, I've been hustling on this thing for a year,
Right.
as opposed to sometimes there was one or two people that pitched multiple projects. And I was like, that's a different feeling. It wasn't bad necessarily, but it's kind of like, I got a whole bunch. Do you want any of them? Take your pick. As opposed to this is a story that I made as a short. It won some awards. It's in the festival this week. I'm looking for people to help me turn it into the feature because it's won these awards and it's proven that there's demand for the story. That just has a different feel to it. Neither
Yeah.
is right or wrong, just a different feel. So, what feel are you trying to create? What emotion are you trying to create with your pitch in order to get people to take the next step with you? Okay, awesome one. I got a big one, and this was like ubiquitous almost. Anytime someone didn't do this, someone on the panel was like, I have a question. So, this one is tell us the end of the story in your pitch. There were so many, maybe 60, 70% of the pitches that gave us the trailer version of it, where it was like the setup and act one and act two, and here's where they are. And then they're like, and that's my story. And we're like, no, it's not. What happens at the end? What happens to the character? Does this happen? Does it resolve? How does it resolve? Like every time someone left it hanging, the first question from the panel was, okay, well, what happens at the end? And my comment there was like, look, we need to know that you know how to resolve a story. And you've done this really great setup of the hook and the genre and the log line and the premise. And you've kind of set up some really great, compelling characters and some great plot and some stuff they have to go through. Did you do it? Did you pay it off? Because if you didn't, that sucks, right? And maybe that's why they're not sharing it sometimes. But it was like there was one pitch, and I forget who it was, but I think I know. I don't remember her name, but I think I know who it was. But she pitched us the first, two acts of the story, and we were like, okay, well, how does it resolve? And then she told us the third act and the resolution. We're like, that's your pitch. That was way more compelling than the first half that you shared in your actual pitch. She's like, oh, okay, well, I'll definitely include it from now on. So I strongly urge you to tell the whole story. We're there to not be teased, but to understand. So if we understand the full breadth of here's how it starts, here's the middle, and here's the end, then we know you know how to string a good story together that's compelling, that pulls us to want to know what the end is, and then we know that you've done it, right? Otherwise, we're going, why did you stop there? That's weird.
Yeah. And I get that mentality because you want us to lean in, you want us to say, wait, what happens next? Da, da, da. And that's great for storytelling. That's great for an audience. But for somebody that you want to partner with, or you're seeking producer, we've got to know what we're getting into. There were a couple that did a great job of that. They told the story very concisely, and I think that it gave lots of room for questions about the project, like you know, again, we could get into the why now and what do you need and that type of thing. The others that left us hanging, that the question time was wasted on finish your story, like finish the pitch. And I'll mention that there was one that did a great job of setting up that first and second act, and we said, okay, what's the rest of the story? And when they mentioned the third act, the story sort of derailed for me. I thought, okay, well, I'm glad I know the whole story, because boy, if I would have gotten involved and that's the direction they wanted to take it, it's not a match. So tell the whole story, be confident in your story, and then we can actually discuss.
Big one.
Awesome.
You have any more thoughts there? I got one more, but we want to be cognizant of time here, because we could probably go all day with thoughts and feedback. But do you have any other takeaways or notes for people that are pitching at a pitch fest?
The one, and this might be nitpicky, but so we can keep it brief. But we want to make sure that you're pitching in your story. You're pitching the kind of the emotion and the relevant arcs, and not necessarily this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. You're
Yeah.
pitching premise and characters, and not plot. Which I know you could push back and say, well, you just asked to say what happened. So there's a delicate balance in that, but oftentimes it was frustrating, and I think the person pitching would get lost in this happened, and this happened, and this happened. And if you're pitching and you're kind of barely hanging on, the panelists have lost interest a long time ago. So hook us with the characters, the overview of what they're feeling or what their experience is, but don't get into the this happened, this happened, this happened plot.
Yeah, I completely agree. So mine kind of goes along with that. This may be my last one, but the idea of just come prepared, right? There were some
Yeah,
people that you know that they knew the story and that they had written a screenplay, and but coming prepared is like, do you really have you practiced and tested your hook or your log line? Do you know that it works? Do you know that it actually does the job of hooking people? Have you practiced in front of a mirror? Do you see how you're looking? Do you see how your hand gestures and your body movement is helping or hurting the thing? Because there were some that just like looked down and just or some that were looking at the audience, some that were looking at us, and it had a different feel to it. None were necessarily right or wrong, but is it doing what you want it to do? And also understanding the room that you're pitching to, right? It's pitching at a pitch fest is very different than pitching in a room to one or two executives.
yeah,
And some people got thrown off by, oh, there's 50 people that are listening to this thing that I haven't prepared very well, because they pivoted from a short pitch to a feature pitch that they hadn't prepared for today. And like those kind of things, like we get it, but you got to understand the room and also how much time you have, right? They were pretty explicit. You have 2 minutes to pitch your thing, and then they have 5 minutes to give you feedback. And there was two or three that went 7 or 8 minutes on their pitch. And then
yeah,
we're all like, cool, great. Next pitch, because we didn't have time. We were trying to be respectful of our time and the room's time to say, you need to understand that if you were told 2 minutes and you took 7, you took 5 minutes of our time to give you feedback. And that's a choice. And so at least that's where I was sitting. I was like, well, I'm not going to give 3 minutes of feedback now because he took that time or she took that time. So coming prepared, really understanding what you're getting into, practicing as much as you can, and testing the tension. This is something that I talked about in my workshop on Wednesday of like, you want to know that your pitch creates tension, meaning a pull to have the person you're pitching it to want to be involved, right? Not necessarily the tension of the story, but like, does this make you want to be involved with it? When you pitched me Faith of Angels and The Carpenter, I was like, I have to do that movie. Like, this is an amazing movie. It's Garrett Batty. There's all these elements. I have to be involved. And there was this pull, this tension that you created in the pitch to make me want to, like, I was knocking on your door. Like, are we doing that? Is that happening? Can I be involved? Am I the guy? Right. Because I was like, I hope I'm the guy. I want to be the guy. Right.
Yeah.
There's that tension you create with a good pitch. So test that with your log line and with your pitch on your spouse or your writing partners group or your friends and family, and say, how do you feel right now? Not what did you think of the pitch? How do you feel right now? Do you feel tension? Does it feel good? Does it feel like a project that's happening? Is it creating the emotion that you want to create? And practice that.
Yeah. Great comments. Yes, I mean, coming prepared, and it is a very different conversation to stand in front of a pitch panel and pitch your idea than it is to talk to your buddy and say, "Hey, what are you working on?" "Oh, I got this idea, and here's this," and that is uh, two. Those are two very different conversations, and we could tell those that maybe had just thought, and I've done that, where you just kind of trade ideas back and forth with your buddy. Like, here's an idea. What do you think of this? Stuff like that, and that is not pitch ready. Steve Lee was one of the producers on the panel, and he's just an incredible producer. And he said to a couple of people, I need you to go look in the mirror and like rehearse and pitch what you're doing. And I think that that's pretty good. That's pretty good advice to do
Yeah.
that. There were others that had come prepared with things written, but their nerves got ahead of them, and so they had a hard time, vocalizing what was on the page that they had written. And the minute that they actually looked at their page and read what they had prepared, I was hooked. I was intrigued. I thought that's
Yeah.
compelling, and so take some time, I guess, to get yourself comfortable enough in front of a panel or a group, or your spouse, whatever it is, that you can vocalize what you've written so that you can deliver it in an interesting way. But yes, definitely be prepared. Great tip.
Yeah.
Hopefully this has been helpful for people, for listeners, and I know it's been good for me. I pitched. This is what we do as independent filmmakers. So just last week, and in fact yesterday, I'm preparing these 4 movies. Somebody reached out and said, "What are you working on?" And I've got 4 projects that I'm pitching, and so this never goes away. We can always improve.
Yeah. Last night I was at a networking event and pitched the film fund 3 times, and I'm going to another one tonight. There's a whole tech industry here in Utah that has an event this week, and then another set of events next week, and then I have an event at the end of the month. So I'm getting people to that event by pitching what I'm working on in every conversation. And so going back and referencing, a few episodes ago when we did our episode on pitching, I think it's important to have all these kinds of pitches ready to go. Your quick pitch, your official pitch, or your invited pitch where you're giving, the log line, or just a 2-minute thing. You need a 20-minute version. Like, you need all these things. So yeah, I'm glad we're talking about it, because I wish I had resources like this when I was learning how to pitch in the mid 20 teens and doing a terrible job at it.
We learn.
We do. That was 10 years ago, and I'm very much an improved pitcher at this point.
Well, good. Speaking of, well, I don't know how to segue. Let's
Do
talk
it.
about
Do it.
box
Try
office.
again.
Yeah, there's
There
no
you go.
segue. Speaking of
Hard cut.
pitching, let's talk about independent films that have been made and are released in the box office. I don't know if that
Yeah.
tracks.
Our,
Uh,
our audience will go with it. Can I throw out an interesting statistic from last year's box office before we get into this weekend?
please do.
I was reading a article from Stephen Follows, our friend Stephen Follows, from 10 to 11 years ago, 2016 or 2017. My math is wrong. 8 or 9 years ago, where he had talked about the top 50 films over those previous couple of years represented about 75% of the total box office. So essentially, studio movies represent 75-ish% of box office. Do you venture a guess as to how much box office the top 50 films represented in 2024?
Oh, you're putting me on the
Higher or
spot.
lower?
I would guess higher.
It is higher. So the total US box office 2024, $8.8 billion. The top 50 films took in $7.2 billion of that, representing 82.42% of box office, which I don't know what to do with that other than it's an interesting statistic. The number's gone up in the last 8 or 10 years. I do not think that means that there is less opportunity for indie films. While there are lots more movies being made every year because of the democratization of film, I think there's the same amount of ticket buyers, essentially, as there were before the democratization of film. And the opportunity is still there. You can reach your audience if you've got all the pieces in place, like we've talked about in this show. So there you go. Nice little nugget. And I just dropped into your ear holes and your eye holes today.
Okay.
How's that for words that were not on your bingo card for
Yeah, I
today's
was not expecting it.
show?
Okay, awesome, great. Um,
Fun.
no, that is an interesting fact. This weekend we are reporting on the January 10th through 12th. Den of
Mhm.
Thieves led the box office. Den of Thieves 2 sequel. Um, and shout out to a movie called Game Changer, which was the number 9 movie released on 800
Yeah.
screens. I don't know who released it. There's no studio for the release.
Yeah. It's Schlocka Entertainment.
Okay. Okay, so maybe a foreign,
Yeah.
certainly attracted a foreign audience. They did 2.1 million on 800 screens and broke into the top 10
Yep.
on their opening weekend. So, Darren, your theory about the sort of a low end, $15 million number one movie means that the number 9 and 10 movies have to have, are typically going to be higher, 2.1 million to break into the top 10.
Yeah. 1.5 for the number 10
I would have
slot.
been
And
number
it's
10.
just like, yeah, I'm glad you're calling it my theory because I want to trademark that and make it my thing. No, but I think it's just an interesting thing that keeps popping up. But yeah, Roadside Attractions, that movie's doing all right. The Last Showgirl, which is the Pamela Anderson thing, I think. And then The Brutalist from A24, Homestead still killing it from Angel Studios. They're going to break 20 million on that movie, which is a big deal for that project. Interesting though that Better Man, the movie about Robbie Williams, traveled. So it's a UK film that really came over here to the United States. Not doing what they hoped. Didn't break the top 10 this week, and so it's always interesting to see how movies perform and how they don't perform. But yeah, Complete Unknown still performing, beat out Wicked this week, which is interesting. Granted, Complete Unknown's in its 3rd week and Wicked's in its 8th week, so that makes a difference. But Wicked's still playing on more screens than a Complete Unknown, and it still eked it out by $200 essentially between the 6th and 7th spot. $199 or $197 difference between those two. Kind of fun. But yeah, I love it. I'm glad that movies are coming back out. Last week we had like 2 new releases, and this week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's awesome. It's
Yeah,
fun, 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 fun. Let's make more movies and put them in theaters and have people go see them.
do it. Hopefully, this podcast helps people do that. We've had some great comments on some of our previous episodes. We want to get to those. Somebody asked about packaging movies, and maybe
Ooh.
how to package, like get a star attached and go that route. And so we'd have to bring on a special guest to talk about that. I don't have experience in that, but I love that topic, and I think that that's how we get from the privately funded, $1 million movies up to more of those independents that are $5 to $7 million. Is we
Yeah,
need to package those.
it's awesome. All right, I'll keep my eyes open for who we should bring on. I have a little experience with that, but we should bring someone else on for the official word on how to package indie projects.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great topic. But keep the comments coming. Keep sharing the podcast. We're seeing growth, and we love it. We will be at different festivals around. So at ZIF in March and um, Christian Festival. I can't remember the
NRB.
NRB. Thank you. So look forward to talking with our listeners there.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun year all around. All right, man. Good to see you. I'm sure we'll talk later today. So see you
Okay.
then.
All right. Take care.
See you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Truly Independent. To join us on the journey, be notified, and ask us questions about today's episode, head over to 3coinpro.com/podcast and put in your name and an email address. If you're a fan of the show, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast app and be sure to share this. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Our intro and outro music is Election Time by Kjartan Abel.